Good afternoon. Welcome to our regularly scheduled Enterprise Committee meeting. Today is September 19th, 2019, and I'm joined here at the dais with my colleagues, Council Members Kevin Reich, Steve Fletcher, Olondra Kano, and Lisa Goodman. My name is Lene Palmisano. I'm the chair of this committee. We have a quorum and are able to conduct this committee's business. Council members, before you today is an agenda with 2 consent items, 1 receive and file, and then several discussion items. I also want to bring to your attention something that is not on our printed agenda, but I would like to add and talk about at the very beginning, perhaps after the consent and receive and file, and that's an honorary resolution honoring Jeff Schneider for his service to the city of Minneapolis. Does anyone have any objections with the agenda? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 The agenda is adopted. The first, we'll go through the consent items. First is the contract extensions with Assessment Associates International, Curfew Leadership Solutions, and DRI Consulting for continued management assessment services. There's no dollar amount to this contract. There's still sufficient money in it. It's just extending the amount of time we are able to make use of these management consulting services. Item number 2 is a contract with Sierra Cedar to extend the PeopleSoft module implementation for the same reasons it does not have a new dollar figure attached. I will also at this time move the receive and file item, which is the department head and deputy job classification study. My understanding is that staff has met with all council members about this update. Are there any questions, or would you like me to remove anything from the consent and receive and file agenda? I'm not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. 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 That carries. Next, before our first discussion item on the city's minimum wage economic impact report, we have a resolution that I'm authoring around Jeff Schneider and his service to the city of Minneapolis. So, Mr. Schneider, if you would come and stand awkwardly before me here, and I'll invite up Mr. Ruff and Andrea Larson if you'd like to do the same. Terrific, here we go. This will be officially passed with every council member as an author this upcoming council meeting. So it is not yet signed, Mr. Schneider. But we did put together some words that we'd like to share about Jeff Schneider's 35 years plus of service with the city. So this is a resolution honoring Jeff Schneider for his service to the city of Minneapolis. Whereas Jeff Schneider has dedicated over 35 years of full-time service to the city of Minneapolis, and whereas Mr. Schneider's tenure and commitment to increasing the rigor of city government and importance of connecting the city to its residents and agency partners have improved the ability for leaders in the organization to govern, staff to be effective, and community members to stay connected. And whereas Mr. Schneider started his career at the city as a community crime specialist in 1982, where over the course of 2 years he organized over 300 block groups throughout the 5th precinct, many that are still going on. And after a brief break, Mr. Schneider returned to the city in a political capacity as an aide in Mayor Fraser's office, where he helped to organize a Mississippi River cleanup, plan for a citywide Congress of Neighborhoods meeting, and was part of the early conceptual planning for what became known as the Neighborhood Revitalization Program. And whereas Mr. Schneider pivoted his career to finance, where he led with passion for transparency, accountability, and data-driven decision-making. And I'll turn it over to somebody with a lot of experience in finance. We're here.
Whereas during his first 6 years in finance, Mr. Schneider participated on a staff team that took a deep look at the city's budget process, resulting in a streamlined process and more authority and accountability to departments, and renegotiated relationships with the independent park and library boards. And whereas during his second 6 years in finance, Mr. Schneider was a part of the city's first formal internal consulting team, then called the, quote, Management Analysis Division, end quote, where, among many accomplishments, Mr. Schneider was a part of the 1999 staff team that laid the framework for the city's current performance management efforts, including department performance reporting, resident surveys, and employee surveys. And whereas Mr. Schneider then moved to Community Planning and Economic Development Department, where he drew on his extensive neighborhood and analytical experience to support economic outcomes for all city residents, including expanding the scope and reach of Minneapolis Trends quarterly report and leading the city's outreach and promotion efforts for the 2010 census, which resulted in Minneapolis having the highest voluntary return rate among cities over 300,000 people. And
whereas Mr. Schneider has concluded his career at the city with major accomplishments, including working with the Borchardt Map Library at the University of Minnesota to archive and digitize 70 years of city aerial photographs, developing the city's financial transparency website, negotiating master contracts with the University of Minnesota for research and space usage, and leading the staff team that established the working relationship with the Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank and multiple state agencies to support an economic impact study of the city's minimum wage. And whereas Mr. Schneider's many accomplishments and contributions to city government have had a significant impact on improving the lives of the people of Minneapolis.
Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and city council do hereby commend Jeff Schneider for his dedication and exemplary service to the city of Minneapolis, presented with deep gratitude and appreciation that will soon be by the mayor and all city council members for your outstanding commitment to the city. That the mayor and city council congratulate Jeff Schneider for his many significant accomplishments and wish you the best in your retirement. We know you won't go far, Jeff. You work on so many of the things that I have found a passion for here at the city, and you better not go far because I'm still going to need your brain on many of them. So did you want to say a couple of words? We've really sprung this on you, so.
Yes, you did. So just a couple of words. So thank you for those kind words, Councilmember Mark and Andrea. It has been a privilege to work in and for the city in which I was born, in which I have called home for most of my life. All of the projects mentioned were done in teams, alongside many dedicated and talented co-workers who shared a belief in government that working together with many partners, we could make our city a little better place for a few more people. It will be left to others to decide to what extent we accomplish that goal, but it's been a meaningful and rewarding place to spend my time and energy over these many years, and I thank the city for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. So with that, committee members, if I could ask your approval on this resolution, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Now we will start our presentation on the federal minimum wage study. Yes, Mr. Schneider, if you wanted to go ahead and introduce our speakers as we welcome the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis.
Yes, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair and committee members, we are here today to receive an update from the research team at the Minneapolis Fed about their ongoing economic impact study that they are conducting on our minimum wage. As the staff report notes, there has been a delay in their accessing the required data from several state agencies, which has pushed back their formal analytical report to next spring. We decided over the summer that it was, we made a joint decision that it was better to wait so that they could incorporate the use of this data in a much more meaningful report than could have been offered at this time. So with the passage of special legislation this spring, they now have access to the Department of Revenue data. This is a first in the state. And the data sharing agreements with both Revenue and with Human Services and DEED are close to being finalized. The research staff at all the agencies, and I have been in touch with all of them, remain committed to this nationally significant study. So with us today from the Minneapolis Fed are Dr. Anusha Nath, who is the project manager, and Dr. Abigail Wozniak, who is the recently appointed director of the Fed's Opportunity and Inclusive Growth Institute, which is the programmatic home of this project within the Minneapolis Fed. And so with that, I'll give it over to Dr. Nath.
Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Nath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, committee members as well. Thank you, Jeff, for the introduction. This is joint work with co-principal investigators Lucas Carver-Bonis and Jeremy Lees from the University of Minnesota. So as Jeffrey mentioned, that this is a status update. We wanted to give an update of where we are with the study of the economic analysis of the increase in Minneapolis' minimum wage. Just to give a brief background before we provide the status update, in June 2017, Minneapolis adopted the minimum wage ordinance, and so far there have been 3 implementations, and they differ by the size of the firm. The small firms are less than 100 employees, and large firms more than 100 employees. The first increment was only for large firms on January 1st, 2018, where the minimum wage had increased to $10. Subsequent changes have occurred on the 1st of July of each year, and currently the minimum wage for small firms is $11 and large firms is $12.25. The incremental changes will happen annually, and to reach $15 for small firms by 2022 and large firms by 2024. Sorry, large firms 2022 and small firms 2024. The city of Minneapolis contracted with the Federal Reserve Bank to study the minimum wage impact, and currently we're in contract for the first 3 years of the 7-year increments of the minimum wage. We now want to give you a brief overview of the study that we are proposed to conduct, and we have proposed a comprehensive analysis that looks at not only workers, but also at firms as well as consumers. From the workers' perspective, we're going to look at several questions. For example, we're going to be analyzing, do workers work fewer hours when there's an increase in minimum wage? And does this effect differ across different demographic groups, different skill levels, and across industries? We're also going to look at whether there's an increase, a net increase in unemployment or a decrease. What is the impact on the wage distribution? Are the effects seen on workers who are almost at the threshold and just above the threshold of the minimum wage as well? And what is the effect on public benefits that the workers receive? On the firm side, we're going to look at questions such as, what is the impact on business openings, closures, relocations outside of Minneapolis? And we're also going to look at the effect on firm sales, their payroll costs, and automation decisions that the firms potentially make. On the consumer side, we're going to attempt to look at whether consumers face increase in prices for the commodities and services that they consume. When the study is conducted and the results are, we get the results from the first anticipated study, we think that this could be a comprehensive and a very unique study that not only impacts policymaking nationally, but also in Minnesota. There's a very unique data set that is available in Minnesota, and that is what we attempt to use to answer these questions. And these data sets that we require for this analysis comes from 3 different state agencies. The first is the DEED, which is Department of Employment and Economic Development, where we have proposed to ask for employee wage records, which are by establishments as well as firms. The Department of Revenue, we have asked for data on firm sales and payroll costs. And from Department of Human Services, we have asked for data on economic assistance on adults as well as for children. Currently, the data sharing agreements are still pending. We have been in discussion with the 3 state agencies since January of 2017. There are 2 different data sharing agreements that are currently being processed. First is a tripartite data sharing agreement between DEED, DHS, and the Federal Reserve Bank. We received the approval for merging data from Department of Human Services with data from microdata from DEED in September 2018, and we're currently awaiting the data sharing agreement from DEED, DHS. Department of Revenue data to obtain that data set, we had it required a statutory provision and change in the state law to disclose return information. And we work closely with cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, as well as the chambers of commerce, to sort of get the access to the restricted data. And from May 2019, this statute came into effect, and we're currently negotiating with Department of Revenue to get access to the data. Just to sort of reemphasize, we're actively working. State agencies have been very sort of supportive of this study as well. And as soon as we get the data sharing agreements, our analysis would sort of depend on the timely execution of such agreements. Once we have the results of our study, we do plan to disseminate as widely as possible. We will be holding conferences where we will be engaging policymakers, stakeholders, as well as researchers across the country to come and discuss the issues and also present our results. And we've dedicated a website on our Opportunity and Inclusive Growth Institute, and the link is up there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments from my colleagues? I will point out, I just want to thank you, Dr. Wozniak, and thank you, Anusha, for your willingness to continue this effort. I know it hasn't been without its barriers to overcome, and also for offering the same to our friends in St. Paul. Your ability to be seen as a researcher, a very unbiased researcher, and to spread this body of work, this research throughout the country, I think is one way that we can really grow our impact as a city, or as a pair of cities, on minimum wage studies. I know that when we embarked on the minimum wage ordinance itself, we kept trying to rely on other kinds of research that was out there, and each one of them had some of their positives and some of their negatives in terms of being able to be an unbiased look at research, and you've really created a pretty comprehensive investigation here. Are there anybody else? I'm not seeing any. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'll move to receive and file the status report. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Next, we have the city coordinator's monthly update. And we have Deputy Director Andrea Larson here to start us off.
Great. Good afternoon, Chair Palmisano and council members. I'm Andrea Larson, Director of Strategic Management in the Coordinator's Office. I'll give a very brief update on a couple key activities happening in the Coordinator's Office before inviting Brian Smith up to spotlight some of the work happening in the Office of Performance and Innovation. We are preparing for a coordinator transition, as most of you should be aware. And that's been a big priority in our office. As we prepare for Nuria to head to Austin, Danielle, Mark, and I have been working with Nuria to split up her work and ensure a smooth transition. We'll continue to do so in the coming months. We are also wrapping up our CIO, Chief Information Officer, final interviews this week and hope to announce in the next few weeks. I had the privilege of sitting on the panel during the first round and was impressed and excited by the caliber of talent. We had a great pool to choose from, and this will be an exciting next step for the city. And then lastly, I know you have all heard this and are aware, but just want to share again that Joy Stevens and the Coordinators Division of Race and Equity have been working hard to lead planning for the 6th annual City of Minneapolis Transgender Equity Summit, taking place on Thursday, September 26th at the Walker Arts Center. I hope everyone is able to join. So, as I said, I wanted to be really brief. If there are any questions on broader coordinator activities, I can answer those. Great. Otherwise, I will invite Brian up, but before I do, I want to give a brief introduction. I asked Brian to bring forward an update on his office and his work because he has led the team through a major and exciting transformation in the last year. Innovation work came to the city through a grant a number of years ago, and after proving its value, our desire has been to find a way to keep this work and make it sustainable. Likewise, performance management has been transforming significantly in the last 5 years, growing to integrate with our budget process to help drive more informed resource allocation decisions. Through truly creative thinking and efficiencies in the work, we've been able to achieve the goal of sustaining innovation work and expanding performance work without adding additional staff or resources. Brian has worked hard to establish a new role for his team, and I think they are now uniquely positioned to have even greater impact. I'm excited for him to share the new structure for the team so that you and other city leaders and staff can engage with them in new ways.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Brian Smith, and I'm the director of the Performance and Innovation Team, City of Minneapolis, formerly known as the Innovation Team. And as Andrea just told all of you, we've combined the work of both Results Minneapolis and Performance Management with the Innovation Team, and now that's why we're called the Office of Performance and Innovation. I want to first start off by saying that, all the hard work that Andrea talked about, I was a part of, but many of those people are here. So Andrea was a part of that work. Jonathan was a part of that work. Elliot was a part of that work, and not just a part of it, they were a huge part of it. So my team and other people here at the city in the coordinator's office and in various departments all put their heads together and help us formulate these ideas, which eventually turned into the Office of Performance and Innovation. And so I want to thank everybody for that and say that on the record, because as brilliant as I might think I am on some days, couldn't do any of it without them. So, got it. Thanks, Jonathan. When you think of the Office of Performance and Innovation, the one thing that we would really like for everyone to think of when they hear that is, you should think of us as an internal consultancy, of course, but with specific skills and tools designed to assist, support elected officials, departments, and the general public with enhancing policies, programs, and services that help us thrive as a city. That's first and foremost what we want everybody to know when they think of the Performance and Innovation Team. And we also, when the Innovation Team came into existence, using a racial equity lens on all of our work was very important. And we know with the Office of Race and Equity being brought into the city, an official office in the city, that we in no way intend to step on anybody's toes or do the work of other departments, but we do work closely with them. And in using that lens, it's in no way meant to usurp anybody else's work, but we work closely with others and they inform us as we do our work while using that lens. This is just a little bit, slide 2 is a little bit about the purpose and the goals of the innovation team, the Performance and Innovation Team. And first of all, the one thing we want to let you know about the purpose and the goals is that we have multiple ways in which innovation projects come to the team, some of which you're already familiar with. We've gotten calls from council members. We've done things that were mayor's priority. We've talked to community members and they say, hey, why don't you look into this policy, this practice? A number of ways where it comes to the team. And so we still want to leave that option open to people because we don't want to put ourselves in a box. And we think when you're talking about performance and innovation, it's important to be as flexible as you can be when you're accepting projects. And we'll take those projects in as a team. using our innovation criteria to determine what it would look like to work on specific projects. We also coordinate across city departments to leverage the talent and knowledge of stakeholders to achieve concrete results. So we know that there are a lot of people throughout the city and various departments and divisions within departments who have a lot of know-how, a lot of knowledge, a lot of tools that they bring in assisting us with the projects that we take. And so we always leverage that. And then we want to provide practical support and deliverables to aid departments in thinking about planning and launching new solutions, thus reducing the burden on their day-to-day responsibilities. This next slide are the core competencies of our team. And so data-driven decision-making. We help policymakers and departments by making decisions informed by data. That's important. We know we live in a fast-paced world where, you know, on a whim, you might be at a coffee shop and you hear something from a constituent. Might have a bad dream one night about something that's going on and come in and say, hey, you know, let's look at this. But what we really want to do is make sure that any decisions that we make are data informed, and so that we can definitely get pros and cons of anything before we make important policy decisions or budgetary decisions in our city. Human-centered design. Human-centered design. We focus on the center. We focus on and center the voices of the most impacted people in the projects that we work on. So that could be city, that could be city staff, that could be residents, but everything that we get into, everything that we design, anything we come up with, we have to center people at the middle of it. And so sometimes we've worked on projects, and we will continue to work on projects where it's really about an internal process and helping city staff become more efficient and more effective in what they do. And so we center them in the middle of it. And then a lot of the times, though, what we do, because of the services that we provide as a city, we have to go out and talk to our community members to see what they really feel and what they think about the policies and the practice and the services that we're offering and how it impacts them. And so we always have to center their voice when that's the type of project that we're working on as well. We do qualitative research, in-depth interviewing, observation, and community engagement. So that's all a part of the process. Outcomes focused project management. I kind of threw the order off from my notes and from the slides and my notes. It's really that we're really committed to achieving positive outcomes through the projects that we take on. That's the main focus. We define what outcomes matter and should be prioritized. We build partnerships across the enterprise where multiple departments are working towards the same outcome. Manage projects start to finish to ensure it moves forward. We will do a lot of, for lack of a better term, hand-holding with departments because we know they still have day-to-day operations to do. And so when we're building these new tools, we're building new practices and policies, we do a lot of hand-holding and a lot of the heavy lifting so that when it's ready to be implemented, then we can pass it off and still be available for technical assistance. We also help with developing tactical work and implementation plans and change management. And the last core competency is inclusive design. And what that is, action-oriented design in our mind, and what that means, we use design principles to show what is possible and to provoke action. We like to come in a room and figure out how to get to yes, always thinking of the possibilities. And we use rapid prototyping, user experience research, and we work quickly and iteratively on all of the projects that we work on. Now performance, so performance management, formerly simply known as results.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
would now be a good time to ask some questions about your last slides before you move into the performance section. I'm curious, how do you prioritize or build your work plan? And what might you have kind of happening in progress right now? Could you give us a few tangible examples?
It was later in the slide, but in the slides. But,
okay.
no,
I can-
but
I can also hold these,
no, it's
yeah.
easier. I can answer it. And anytime throughout the presentation, feel free to interrupt and ask questions. The way we prioritize our work is, so if we're in the midst of several projects and we're approached with another project, what we do is we sit down as a team to determine how long the existing projects are taking us, how much time and resource that takes, how many people we would literally have to bring in to assist with our projects along with our team. And we also do a matrix to kind of look at where things are politically, where things are with resource, and how much momentum we actually can garner across the entire enterprise to get work done. And so that way we can measure what we take on and then kind of figure out how much energy and resource we actually have to give to particular projects. And so we do have a new format, which is not included in this presentation, that will be going out to the entire enterprise that says, this is the way you come to the innovation team, the performance and innovation team. If you have projects, you fill out a questionnaire, and it asks a bunch of questions about time, resource, political things, like when you actually want it done, so that we can sit down as a team and make a good determination as to whether or not we can take that project on at that time or later on at a later date. And that'll be going out to the entire enterprise within a couple of months. I'm not sure if that completely answered your question, but
Would one level of prioritization be whether or not this is a project or research on some key city deliverables or key city services, or whether it's something new? Is that part of the filter as to whether or not you would take a project on?
that's part of the consideration, yes.
And what is your current capacity? How many FTEs do you have in your department?
Madam Chair, current capacity is we have 2 program managers, myself, 2 consultants on board that help, and 2 analysts will be starting October 1st. So the team will be at full capacity as it once was, since we finished the transition.
And a few projects that you currently have underway or in progress?
We have a few projects underway, and nothing specific in the hopper now, but we have been able to take on smaller projects, research projects. There's a project that you'll hear about a little bit later, which actually your office was involved in with public access television. The conduct on licensed premise, although the ordinance passed, there are still some logistical things to get the actual process of running the conduct on licensed premise project day to day. And so we're still involved with that, and that should be wrapped up hopefully within a couple of months. There are always several projects that I end up forgetting about when I'm not prepared to answer those questions, but
Sure.
I will definitely get you a list of all the things that are on the table right now, if you would like that.
I just think it would be interesting in trying to tangibly get to what this team is working on. But go ahead with your presentation.
I'm sorry. And we're also at the moment working on, there's a human-centered design training workshop that we are currently putting together as a team that will be offered to the entire enterprise, because we think it's important to have as many people around the enterprise have an opportunity to understand human design thinking and how we do our work, so we can have allies in departments. So that is being developed right now. And we hope to offer that quarterly as a team, but also talk to HR to build that in as a learning opportunity that any staff member can get whenever they want. And we're also doing a lot of interviews with department heads around the data aspects of the results reporting, because we know that a lot of departments, literally with the divisions that they have, there's not one single place where data resides. And so for reg services, for example, we make the request for certain types of data based on the metrics that we come up with for their results report. But one of the things that we didn't necessarily understand is that they have to go to 4 or 5 divisions within that department and collect data based on those metrics, and they may very well, in most cases, don't have systems set up already by which they collect that data on a regular basis. And so there's a lot of hand pulling, a lot of asking questions of a lot of people. But we have one single point where we ask the question, but then that person has to go and ask multiple people where the data is so that they can get it. And so right now we have Elliot and one of our interns who've been going around and doing interviews with department heads, and they're point people to figure out where those data sets live. And so that's been taking quite a bit of time as well.
Okay.
So performance, the way we define it, is the practice of selecting metrics, collecting and analyzing data, and reporting on the progress of programs and services within departments toward the city's long-term goals. And this is the how of how we do the performance management. First thing is metric selection. The team works with departments to figure out what metrics they would like to have in their report. So we do a lot of research, and there's best practices for like fire, police, reg services department, planning and development. But we sit down with them and we jointly come up with the metrics for those departments. And just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that, because I know sometimes there's some disagreement between what metrics people have and what they don't. But as a team, we don't force those metrics on anybody. We sit down and have a conversation, and they have to agree to them. The next step is data collection, which I just talked about. Then analysis. Our team, along with the budget office and the analysts from the budget office, because they all assign different departments, we sit down and we analyze the data that comes in from departments while we're putting together the results reports. And I just want to say that the budget office has been extremely helpful in that process, because they work day to day with departments and they see the budget all year round. And so they have different insights that we just don't have as a team. And then we come together with the home committee chairs of those particular departments, go through that analysis, and come up with what's going well and areas for opportunity. And that's been working well, and we plan to strengthen that partnership with the budget office to do a better job of our analysis. And then the final portion is the reporting, which comes to the budget committee in the form of a finalized results report. Innovation. We have our own definition, of course, which is a systematic process for identifying the problems that matter, designing and implementing solutions that deliver meaningful outcomes. And the how for innovation is research and discovery. Some of this, most of the committee members are probably familiar with, because we've talked about the process before, but research and discovery, because we really want to make sure that we understand what we're trying to solve for. A lot of people come to us and say, this is something that I'm interested in, but it takes a lot of research and discovery to actually figure out what exactly people want to solve for, and that's very important. And then our engagement internally and externally, where we do data gathering, put together groups internally and externally to get as much information as we can and engage with people around what the actual issue is. And then we do concept generation and validation, is where we do rapid prototyping. People come up with solutions that we think we want to test, do some rapid prototyping to see if it works well, if it doesn't work well, and then we take those things that move to the next stage, which is solution development. And after solution development, we do implementation, planning, and support, which is why we stick with people for quite some time as we build these tools, build these practices and policies, a lot of hand-holding. And then once people feel secure in running it in their day-to-day operation, we offer a high level of technical support, and then it just fades as time goes on and people become comfortable running whatever we come up with as a solution to the issue that they had. Oops. This is a slide that shows the cycle of work and the way we see it. So you'll see light colored, there's all blue here, but the lighter colored blue shows you how involved we are with projects on the performance end of the work and the innovation end of the work as we go throughout the year. So you can see where we have a lot of heavy lifting on the performance side, performance management. Q1, we send out guidance to all the departments and distribute the report template. That's easy for us. It's just a couple of emails with some instructions. Then in Q2, that's when we have a lot of work to do. All 22 departments, we're collecting their information, we're reviewing it, we're doing analysis and really beginning to put the reports together. And then Q3, there's the debrief and customer feedback with the departments. And then in Q4, again, we're preparing for the next year's reports. That's on the performance side. The innovation projects, we're closing out things in Q1 from the previous quarter. And then the lightest part of the innovation work is the evaluation of potential projects. We take everything in and see what we're going to work on for the rest of the year. And then there's a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of time and resource put into Q3 and Q4 with managing those projects that we decide to take on. And so this is just an example to kind of show you where we do what we do at what times of the year and where most of the work, the bulk of the work and resources taken up at what times of the year. And that is it. And if you have any questions.
Questions, comments, thoughts from my colleagues? Councilmember Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question and then some feedback. So I appreciate you coming forward to share updates about your process and the work. I concur with my colleague here that it would be great to have a list of the currently operating projects that you have, so we can get a sense of the variety of departments that you're touching and the nature of the projects that are coming before you, as well as a list of sort of like the projects that are in queue or that, I don't want to say the projects that are on hold, but, you know, just so we can get a better understanding of how many requests is your department getting per year, per quarter, the frequency of them. It would just be nice to see how folks are leaning on your division throughout the enterprise. I think what would also be helpful for me to better understand what's happening, and it's not because it's just the nature of the beast. There's a lot of different departments within the city. There's a lot of work going on, a lot of competing priorities. So it's good that we get a chance to kind of take a peek at what's going on here. So I would love to see more of like the completed projects, like the things that you felt have been really successful that your team has helped with. And I know I was able to work with one of your colleagues here in the conduct on premises at licensing work, and that was helpful. But it'd be nice to also just see what's been worked on. And part of it is to be able to communicate externally to the residents about the change that's happening in the city and the improvements that are being made, because all of the slides here point to some really good work. But I think a lot of our divisions and departments struggle in helping community residents understand what that tangible benefit is for them of all the process that we lead and all the meetings that we have and how we spend all our time. So for me, you know, I have a newsletter that goes out every other week, and I love to feature things within the enterprise that can help my residents feel a tangible impact. So having a list of the things that your division has been able to help deliver on would be helpful, and then connecting that to a website so they can learn more is also nice, so that they're not calling me asking me about your work, but they can go directly to where that information lives. And then I just had a question about, does your team ever take on work that like council members request that, hey, we need you to look at this one issue? And I think that, you know, the Councilmember Cunningham's work was an example of that, but it's my understanding that you have sort of a system where departments can ask for your help, but I'm curious about sort of the other component of it where maybe you are being asked to work on somebody's things with them that they're not really interested in working on with you, and the tension of that, because as elected officials who sometimes try to hold our own enterprise accountable to change and improvement, sometimes we hit that wall, right, where information is not being given to us, people aren't responding, or there's just kind of this runaround. So I'm just curious about how that other portion of the work happens if you are invited into somebody's shop that may not be interested in having your innovation and help, and then what happens there? What do you do with that? And who helps you make those decisions, and how does that work?
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Cano, I'll start with your last question first, because I wrote the other ones down there right there. When the innovation team first got here, we did have some instances where we were invited into work by someone else, which put us in places where those departments weren't necessarily welcoming. That has not been the case now for the last 2.5 years. And so we don't run into that anymore. Not to say that it couldn't happen again, but we just have not run into that. As far as how the website and how we communicate information, this 10-page presentation that you see today is actually 10 pages of 69, which actually outline all the projects, what came out of them. It doesn't mention things that are being done now, but a completion of our work, things that we've completed and the impact that it's had both internally and externally. And so I can forward that after this meeting today. Our website, we used to keep up, so I apologize. You could at one time go to our website and find out in real time where our projects were from start to finish. That has not happened as of late. We have our intern who actually interned with Councilmember Cunningham this summer. We brought Liv into our office, and that's her project, is redoing the website, bringing more current information on, and having everything on our website so that people can actually go to it and see what's happening in real time and the impact that it's having on the city and the residents. So that is happening. With how we take on new work, our hope is that everybody, whether that's electeds, whether that's department heads, and we also left room for community to come in for 1 or 2 projects a year based on how they see their city operating, to give us suggestions about innovation projects that they'd like us to take on, and we take that information in and review it the same way. That's how we'd like things to go in a perfect world. We know that doesn't always happen. We know sometimes we put out fires and there's some things that have immediacy, and we're willing to take all that stuff into consideration. If Councilmember Fletcher or yourself called up, hey, can you give us some research on this? I need some pros and cons about this ordinance that I'm thinking about. We've done that all along. But what we would like is for people to put that in our new format, which we'll be sending out to everybody, and make a formal request, so that way it's easier for us to track and go in and pull that information out and track what we've done, what the requests have been, what came of it. Because we've done a lot of little projects here and there which haven't taken the full innovation team process, that sometimes once it's done, and it's been helpful, but we don't see it as a major initiative that has major impact across departments or citywide on residents. But it's still significant, but since it's not coming, so we'd like for it to come in that way so we can track it. But again, I also know that there may be some instances where we just get a call, like, hey, I need this, can you help? And we're open to that as well. Is there anything else that you asked that I didn't answer? I'm sorry, tried to write them down.
No, I think it helps me understand a little bit more about how the push and pull of the energy on your work. I think for the list of completed projects or successful initiatives and the list of kind of what you're working on now and what's in the queue, it would be great to have sort of just like an executive summary of that, which maybe it's just an Excel sheet with like the listing of it, and then whatever addendum you want, if it's like 65 pages, 100 pages. But I think just for the sake of being able to quickly peruse what the work is, with the department that's associated with it, and maybe the timeline, expected timeline would be helpful, just so that we can quickly ascertain what's being, what's kind of in the realm of your world, and then if we want to dig deeper, then we can page through the 65 pages and whatnot. So thank you.
Mr. Smith, isn't it true that the Access Television work that's coming up next has had the benefit of work with your innovation team?
Yes,
So that would be one good, clear, concrete example to
I would think
mention.
so, and I hope you think so as well.
Great. Any other questions or thoughts from my colleagues? Without that, I will make a motion to receive and file the coordinator's update. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next, we're going to take items 6 and 7 together, and that is an update on our Access Television and an RFP to do this here forward into the future on behalf of the city. So with us today are two people who I know have been deeply involved in that work, Director Greta Bergstrom and Jonathan Kimball Williams. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair Palmisano and council members. My name is Greta Bergstrom. I am the city's communications director, and I also happen to be the city's cable officer. I am joined, as you had mentioned, by our partner from the Coordinator's Office of Performance and Innovation team, Jonathan Williams Kinzel, who is going to present the work today, the work that a work group has taken on over the past year or so, especially over the past spring and summer, on Access Television. I also would like to mention that Mike Bradley, our city's outside counsel on telecommunications and cable franchising matters, is here as well in the audience in case there are specific questions that arise.
Thank you for introducing him. Welcome, Mr. Bradley. He's a familiar face to some.
Yes, I know he is very well respected, and we do lean on him for advice often. We have two requests today for council action. The first is receiving and filing today's update on Access Television based on city staff work over the past year, which results from the Communications Department's Results Minneapolis Deep Dive last August. And based on the staff work group's learnings, as well as at the recommendation of the City Attorney's Office, our second request today is for council to authorize the Communications Department and the city's cable officer to issue a request for proposal soliciting the professional services of a public access vendor. The vendor selected would manage and operate the city's 3 public TV access channels, or public access TV channels on behalf of the city. Before Jonathan kind of steps up to the plate here, I'm going to briefly walk you through a little bit of background on the Access Television project. Last August, as I mentioned, the Communications Department held our Results Minneapolis Deep Dive session, where our current public access TV performance and operations metrics were reviewed. There was broad agreement that council members and staff would undertake work to review community needs and desires for public access TV in the future to make sure that the city is effectively using our public access dollars to meet the needs of our diverse populations in the city. This past winter, a working group was formed to evaluate the city's needs, including key areas of performance, as the 2019 contract comes up for renewal. Learnings will inform the RFP process moving forward. Throughout the spring and summer, the Coordinator's Office of Performance and Innovation conducted outreach and research to better understand the opportunities and challenges presented by Access TV in the current media and cable environment. The Access Television Work Group consists of the following members: the City Communications Department, Office of Performance and Innovation with the Coordinator Department, various city council members who have provided the work group with insight and feedback along the way, led by the chair's office, The city attorney's office has been very involved along the way, and then staff from finance and property services, including procurement and the budget office. So I definitely want to introduce Jonathan and express my sincere appreciation for the work that he has done all along for the Office of Performance and Innovation and for Brian's entire team, including Liv Williams and Elliot Payne and a few others along the way. We have really been a key beneficiary of your work, and I'm excited to have you present.
I will note to my colleagues that while it's been a while since March of this year, every council office was asked to sit down and give some feedback to Jonathan and staff. So welcome, Mr. Williams Kinslow. Sorry I got your name inverted last time.
That's okay. It happens more often than you know, so it's all right. Good to break the ice, though. My name is Jonathan Williams Kinslow, Program Manager for the Office of Performance and Innovation. Before we get started in this presentation, I just want to briefly explain the inclusive design approach. Anytime we take on a project that has a goal of improving the lives of residents, we want to work in a way that results in solutions that enhance quality of life. Inclusive design is a discipline of design thinking aimed at understanding people, challenging assumptions, and redefining problems. By approaching our work with empathy, we strive to understand how policies, programs, and services shape the lives of who we serve. It's through this lens that we believe we can aid the city in building equitable services to those who've been excluded while providing new benefits to those who've been included. So let's get to it. What is access television? Cut and dry, it was created by the FCC that required cable operators who wanted to service our cities to provide us with channels to serve the public. Access television, or as you'll hear me say, access TV, is an alternative to mainstream commercial television where the general public, such as individuals or organizations, can broadcast content such as news, educational pieces, cultural programs, and locally relevant content. Access TV establishes a local public forum for community participation while giving people a voice to encourage civic engagement. We have 3 types of access channels. Public programming conducted by local people, and that can have a wide range of content depending on the community's interest. Education program run by the school board, and it focuses on broadcast content. This is educational or made just in general by the school. And then government programming, broadcast content that shares updates on the local government, and can include recordings of council meetings, or this meeting we're in right now, or other related content. So how is this programming funded? So this is a great kind of visualization that we hope you all can see and share. So the city and cable providers, they get together. Cable providers come to the city, say they want to provide cable services to our residents and businesses. The city provides them access to the right-of-ways in exchange for upwards of no more of 5% of fees, which are called franchise fees, and also PEC fees as well. This funding in particular, a set amount of funding we provide for public access channels, and we provide our other additional 6 channels to education and government. Those channels are broadcast on public access TV and other platforms, and they're able to be viewed by cable subscribers and non-cable subscribers. Currently, our public access vendor is MTN, or Minneapolis Telecommunications Network. They were originally founded by the city, and we've worked closely together with them up until 2017, and that was in which MTN became a formal 501c3. All right, so while access TV has largely been popular, especially in the 70s, 80s, expansions in technology options and new platforms to connect audience has resulted in access television's declining popularity. Some of those access TV challenges include cable subscription declines, video on demand and streaming service popularity, generational viewership changes, and then Regulatory challenges. Why should we still value access TV today? I mean, local media is central to building community identity. We feel that local media provides that voice and amplifies that voice. Public access encourages civic engagement to come to different events, to be included in discussion. And ultimately, it provides a platform for underrepresented populations to spark awareness about issues in their community and interesting stories in their neighborhoods. So Public Access and Community Media Workshop. As a result of our research, we hosted a Public Access and Community Media Workshop in August, in which we spent 2 hours with local media organizations learning about barriers and challenges associated with the community media industry. We were able to identify key themes, challenges, and generate ideas that helped us change the way we thought about public access TV and its use. So this visual in front of you is how we believe community media should be reimagined in Minneapolis. New challenges have impacted viewership and funding, forcing cities to seek innovative solutions to ensure the long-term stability of all programming and services under the Access TV umbrella. The image before you represents the city possibly adopting a holistic approach that supports services beyond traditional access TV offerings of training and production, and supports local media organizations. Through partnerships and support, the city, along with Public Access TV and other community-based media organizations, can sustainably amplify the voices of residents through storytelling and content creation. So the example you see here is how the city would take an approach of working together with community-based media organizations and access television channels to work together to be able to support one another in providing hyper-local content to our residents beyond what we traditionally see from the Star Tribune or KR11 itself, the stories that are not typically heard, or the pieces, the emotional pieces that the channels take for 5 or 10 minutes of their 30-minute segment in time. Furthermore, we identified additional opportunities. Some of those opportunities were around some of the performance metrics, and so establishing community media metrics, establishing possibly imported media policy for possible stories that come outside of the city itself, leveraging media and media organizations to support access television, working with other media organizations to start more of a consortium of community media. One of the things that we heard that was really interesting was the chicken before the head. There's a really interesting opportunity around workforce development, where there's an aging population of employees in the media industry themselves in the state that are looking to retire, but there isn't a pipeline that hasn't been established, and that these groups kind of want to get together as a whole to figure out how to develop that pipeline, and the city might be a catalyst to start that type of efforts, not necessarily to walk through it hand and foot and finish it, but to kind of get these groups together and say, hey, can you all formalize something and move forward with it? But probably one of our first steps is around issuing an RFP to manage the public access channels. To do that, and we cultivated all of our work, and we came up with goals and kind of qualifications for who we would look for what we would look for in a public access vendor. And one of those is access, so the availability of communication tools and resources to our public participant, how they would approach having involvement from the community, content, making sure local media is produced by and whom it for was intended for, relationship, the connections that they make in the community, and then opportunities. So space for individuals in the community to grow. Along with that, those 5 kind of goals that we have there, we have some qualifications. So leadership, structure, and board health. What does your leadership structure look like? What is the health of your board? Do you have a nonprofit? Are you a nonprofit organization? Do you have that status currently? Diversification of funding. While the city provides funding for the public access channels, we want to look for a vendor that also is able to raise funds and generate funds themselves to continue to operate public access television in the city. And then current asset values, what value do you have? What kind of technology, equipment do you already have on tap? Facilities do you already have available to operate an public access channel? From here, I will pass it along to Greta to finally kind of talk about the request for proposals and kind of some of our process.
Thanks, Jonathan, for your work. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we are coming to council to ask for authorization to issue an RFP. We are asking for this for three primary reasons. The first is to align with best practices for governing professional services contracts that exceed $175,000. We want to make sure that we have a competitive, fair, and transparent process in awarding the contract to whoever would be selected as the vendor for public access TV management. Also, at the recommendation of the city attorney's office that we have been working with closely. And we want to ensure that the Access TV vendor does reflect the Access TV Workgroup's recommendations and suggestions. And so we are working currently with procurement to put that draft RFP together. And we'll be working with the policy review group as well to review and to make sure that they are comfortable with that as well. Our plan at this stage is to finalize that request for proposal and issue that no later than December 31st of this year. And then, of course, upon selection of a vendor, we would return to council for contract approval, and we would expect that to be probably very early next year. And with that, Chair Palmisano and council members, I can stand for questions.
Director Bergstrom, when would you look to enact a new working relationship or a continued working relationship with these media services? Would it be for first quarter next year? Would there be a period of transition? I'm not sure how long our existing contract goes.
Sure. So our existing contract does end at the end of this year. We do anticipate a transition, but I would like to mention that as we put the RFP out, our current vendor, which is MTN, I would expect, but do not know, that they would submit a proposal as well. And so in the selection and review, we'll make that determination as to who the city feels is in a best position to serve as the vendor going forward. If there were a change, there would be a transition, kind of a ramping up and probably a ramping down then of MTN in that situation. So we do expect a transition possibly of maybe 6 months or so.
Thank you. Are there questions from my colleagues? Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. So as someone who has used public access in a variety of ways for a long, long time, I've wondered about this business model, and I've wondered about how long it's actually going to be a thing. And I know that there's been regulatory questions about, at the federal level, about whether it's even going to be sustained, because in a sense, the monopoly status of cable companies that used to define the market is now being kind of usurped by broadband access and sort of all the different ways that people are accessing this work. So I guess I'm a little bit curious how we're thinking about that, and how we intend to continue communicating through all the various channels, including YouTube and everything else that we're using, if the cable side of this kind of goes away. How does this impact the way we're thinking about this RFP?
Sure. Do you want to?
Yeah. It's not the genre of music I typically listen to, but there's a song where video killed the radio star, but radio's still here. So I would not foresee cable or access television going away. A lot of our research kind of led us to the idea that the approach that you take to access television itself has to change and has to innovate to continue. So the diagram that I showed you earlier was the city taking a different approach through partnerships with local media organizations, utilizing our access TV channels better, and working together to better leverage each other to ultimately provide hyperlocal content to our residents, because that is actually the main goal. Tell hyperlocal stories, provide hyperlocal content. And so those are our guiding principles going forward. We'll be able to utilize those tools, which would be access television, city resources, local community organizations, to be able to lift up those voices that are underserved or underprivileged as well. So.
Chair Palmisano and Councilmember Fletcher, I think the other thing that we do know is that video is definitely on the ascendancy, and so video content itself is extremely important. I think it's extremely important to our diverse communities as well, who a 20-second video. They can get a quick dose of information in a way that, a flyer or something written may not serve that purpose. And so we're acutely aware that our public access TV is providing content. And so we're looking into, making sure that that content is as effective, compelling, visually compelling as possible. So we do see that as a valuable asset to the city in the years to come. But again, kind of diversification of channels and how we're using those channels is important.
I don't see any other questions or comments. I do want to point out this has been a multi-year effort on your part, and I really appreciate being able to put a marker down and say that now we're here on it. It's been a long road, and things that you haven't had a chance to include in your presentation include also potentially insourcing this and what the cost of such a thing would look like. And so I appreciate all the avenues that you've explored, even if they're not right here in your presentation. I know it was very thorough. I will go ahead and make the motion to both receive and file this update on Access Television and also authorize the issuance of the RFP for future management of providing community media services on behalf of residents. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
With that, our business on our agenda is done, and we are adjourned. Thank you.